Hello and welcome to the first talk. I'm Ian, I'm one of the organisers and I also moonlight as an accessibility specialist when I'm not helping Tyra put on events. I'm going to start this event as I always do with a news update. There is a common theme in the resilience and self-care kind of talks we have. The working in accessibility can be hard, so you need to celebrate the wins. And that doesn't only apply to your own wins. So I'm going to give you a quick look at some of the wins that our community in general has had over the past 6 months since the last edition of the conference. It's not comprehensive, it is just a highlights reel, but it's still going to be a lot to get across. It's going to be coming over pretty quick. Don't feel like you need to keep notes or go and look anything up, because at the end I am going to give you a document, and that document has links in it to every single thing that I'm going to talk about. I am going to cover 6 areas: hardware, developer resources, gamer resources, events, games, and people. First up, hardware. The past 6 months have seen a wide range of innovation in this area, starting with this, which is the no pull, no lift controller. This is a prototype controller developed by a group at the University of Prince Edward Island with help and advice from AbleGamers. It works like a joystick but with a much larger grip, very small movements needed to operate it, and also just sliding around on the 2D plane rather than tilting in different directions. Enabled Play launched. This is a device with huge potential aimed at freely translating any kind of input, which includes head positioning, facial expressions, speech and virtual controls, into single or macro output mapped to any standard output like keyboard, mouse, controller. The 8BitDo Lite SE. This is a lightweight, compact Android and Switch controller with all the inputs moved onto the top face and also highly sensitive sticks designed in collaboration with a player who had spinal muscular atrophy. The real standout here is cost. This device costs $35. It is incredibly rare for any assistive tech to be that affordable. While we're on the topic of affordability, the Microsoft Adaptive Accessories. This is a whole range of highly customizable PC kit designed with personalization through 3D printing in mind. It includes a mouse, an interface to connect accessibility switches to, and also a D-pad with a choice of toppers that acts as a bank of switches itself. I spoke about this at the previous event, so I'm not going to go into too much detail, but they now have prices, including $59 for a high quality switch interface, which is just unheard of, and a release date too. The full suite releases tomorrow. And also something nice in the interaction between hardware and operating system. Apple had developed Buddy Controller. This is their equivalent to Copilot on the Xbox or Tandem on the Stadia. It's a way to connect 2 controllers and have both of them do exactly the same thing as each other. This means that the same set of controls can be split between 2 different people, or between 2 different body parts, like some controls controlled with your hands, other controls controlled with your foot. It released on iOS last month, and it releases on iPad and Mac today. Next up, resources for developers. There has been some nice progress, not just in the breadth of resources, but also the type of resources too. Sticking with Apple for a minute, Apple have released an open source plugin for Unity to expose interfaces to the accessibility layer of Apple devices, which in turn means that the interfaces are then exposed to the screen reader, to switch support, to voice control, and so on. While this isn't quite the holy grail of this all being done by default by Unity itself, this is still a monumental leap. This is one of the biggest steps forward I've seen in game accessibility in the whole 16 years that I've been working in this field. I couldn't even begin to count the number of iOS game developers I've spoken to who really wanted to do great things, but haven't been able to because of that barrier between the engine and the accessibility layer. So this is a huge step forward in breaking down that barrier. Unity themselves have been busy too. They have now joined the likes of Xbox and Unreal in developing free training materials for their developers. This proliferation of free training courses is really wonderful to see. And speaking of Xbox, they've been busy too. They have upgraded the Xbox accessibility guidelines with guidance on touch input and also on mental health. So that's covering things like phobias and PTSD. They have also now started to offer a new variant of their accessibility testing service. That testing service is a paid service open to any game at all releasing on the Xbox or PC. The regular service, which existed for a while, is a detailed audit against their full set of all their accessibility guidelines. It's conducted by a mix of subject matter experts and disabled players. This new service is a lighter version, so it just looks at some core functional scenarios like navigation and communication, and it's conducted solely by disabled players. Both Xbox and also Carrie Waterton of Rebellion have released their own handy collections of links to guidelines, talks, articles, tools, and so on. Again, at the end of this talk, I will give you a document which has links to these and everything else that I've mentioned too. The information available to gamers has seen some nice progress too. A lot of what I'm going to talk about now in this section is down to Xbox. They don't have me on commission, I promise. It is just a credit to the extraordinary commitment to accessibility that they've been showing. They have overhauled their accessibility support pages and published support guides, which are easy to follow video content on how to enable and operate accessibility functionality of the console itself. They've added filtering functionality to the storefront so that the accessibility tags already present on games can now be searched on, giving extra visibility to developers who are implementing this stuff, and also making it easier for players to make informed purchase decisions. They have launched the Ambassadors Accessibility Explorer Path. This is gamified training for their Ambassadors program to ensure that players can get knowledgeable support from within the community. And last but by no means least, supporting the collaboration between Taming Gaming and Special Effect to bring vital information on controls to the Family Video Games Database site. This site is already a huge asset for the community, researching and sharing information about accessibility across a huge range of titles. So this simple addition of this really vital information of just what controls you need to be able to operate to play the game is going to make this into an even stronger resource again. Another vital resource for players is trailers. A while back, Ubisoft blazed the trail for audio description in game trailers, becoming the first company in any industry to use YouTube's new functionality for audio description. If you aren't familiar with audio description, it is an optional extra narration track that verbally describes what is happening visually, primarily for people who have difficulty seeing it. Ubisoft have now produced over 60 audio described trailers, and it is spreading like wildfire through other companies too. Some recent examples include Hearthstone, Forza Motorsport, The Last of Us Part 1, God of War Ragnarok, Skull and Bones, and Assassin's Creed Mirage. This is easy and cheap to do if you're outsourcing to a third party, and it isn't just a benefit to the people watching the videos. It's also putting workflow and supplier relationships in place that will make it easier to include audio description in games themselves. I will come back to that later. First though, let's have a look at events. Events have moved in some interesting directions in the past 6 months. Firstly, developer events about accessibility. Like this is the RNRB Game Accessibility Symposium. This was a really wonderful event bringing together people from all over the industry, all over the world, to collaborate and problem solve issues around making games accessible to blind and low vision players. And like We Speak Games, this was a new mini conference dedicated solely to voice input in games. And A11YTO Gaming in Toronto. This is actually an event that has run before as a conference, but for this year they shifted direction with exhibits, demos, a hands-on maker event, opportunity for players and developers to meet the people behind accessibility in person, turning it from a conference into a real celebration of accessibility aimed at both developers and players. This was a great move, and I am very excited to see where this is going to go in the future. Also on the player side of things, some of you may be familiar with an event called the Sento Showdown. That's a Mortal Kombat tournament for blind players, which is now in its 3rd year. And now there is another, the Shingan Cup. This was a Street Fighter V tournament held in May in Japan, again open solely to blind players. Accessibility of events has continued to improve too. Xbox smashed the bar for in-person shows with their booth at Gamescom this summer, which had a huge range of accommodations from wheelchair accessibility and adaptive controllers to sensory equipment, quiet room, and interpreters on hand for 3 sign languages. You'll be hearing all about that in detail later today. They also made progress on their streamed events too, offering both audio description and sign language in Japanese for their Tokyo Game Show broadcast. And then Ubisoft raised the bar for streamed events higher still. This year's Ubisoft Forward event provided subtitles in 11 languages, sign language in 4 languages, and audio description in 2. This is the pinnacle at the moment for streamed events, but it's doable. So please look at what companies like Ubisoft and Xbox are doing and apply those learnings and their practices to your own events too. And I'm sure they would be more than happy to chat and to help. So on to what it is all about next, the games. Indies, as always, have been doing wonderful things, like Lost and Hound's Blind Accessibility by Design, which you'll be hearing about in just over an hour's time. And also many others like Return to Monkey Island, Cult of the Lamb, Rogue Legacy 2, To the Dragon Cave, Rollerdrome, The Spirit and the Mouse, All of these wonderful showcases of what is possible with limited time and limited resources. And also great progress at the bigger team, bigger budget end of the spectrum too. Games like Sniper Elite 5, A Plague Tale Requiem, As Dusk Falls, Saints Row, Multiversus, Rocksmith Plus, Mario and Rabbids Spark of Hope, and Solstice, all by far exceeding anything that AAAs were doing just a few years ago, and all of them pushing the bar in their own unique ways. There are two in particular that made me smile though. Steel Rising, which is a Souls-like with highly configurable difficulty, and The Quarry, a game with a literal movie mode where all the action is stripped out, you just choose some initial parameters, and the story plays out as a movie based on what you chose. If you have had any engagement at all with the toxic side of accessibility discourse in social media, I think you'll appreciate why these two examples made me smile. There has also been an abundance of existing games becoming more accessible through updates. Dead Cells, Deathloop, and No Man's Sky in particular had enormous accessibility updates. But there were a ton of others too, like Roundguard, Doom Eternal, Quake, yes, really, Quake, Spin Rhythm, Overcooked, Infernax, and in a couple of days' time, Resident Evil Village 2. All of this thoroughly proving that while it is never too early to consider accessibility, it is also never too late. And that brings me neatly on to remakes. For years and years, people have campaigned for accessibility in remakes. From a developer's perspective, if you are remaking a game, you really have two key business goals. Firstly, expand the audience to a wider market. Secondly, make an additional sale to the original players who are now older with different capabilities. You simply cannot do an effective job of either of those things without considering accessibility. It has gradually started to happen over the past couple of years, but now two games have taken it to a whole new level. First of these two games is Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe. This remake upgraded the game with a wide range of accessibility considerations, from customizable subtitle size to simplified one-hand control schemes, from dynamic PTSD trigger warnings all the way through to overlays for environmental text. The second is The Last of Us Part 1. This remake's shift to the same engine as The Last of Us 2 brought the opportunity to make use of all the functionality from that game. While there are limits on how much you can do with a game that wasn't designed from the outset with accessibility in mind, they still not only took the opportunity, but they built upon it, adding, amongst other things, audio description for cutscenes, never before seen in any AAA game, and a high-fidelity haptic dialogue, never before seen in any game. I'm not going to go into too much detail as you will be hearing all about it from Naughty Dog tomorrow. But suffice to say, between this and Stanley Parable, the bar has now been set. I think that any developer releasing a remake in 2023 who wants to meet player expectations is going to have to put some good effort into accessibility. Bringing the visuals up to 2023 standards while leaving accessibility in 2003 is no longer going to cut it. Last, of course, the people who make it all possible. Since the last GA-Comp 6 months ago, there has been a whole bunch more recruitment of people into full-time accessibility roles. Jasmine Kano as Accessibility Product Manager for Alchemy. Teresa Wong, Senior Accessibility TPM for Xbox. Morgan Baker and Kate Gonzalez at EA, Game Accessibility Lead and Senior Accessibility Program Manager respectively. Adrian Leder as Senior Manager of Inclusive Design for Activision Blizzard. Sam Schaffel, moving from Santa Monica over to Insomniac as Accessibility Design Researcher. Greg Haynes, who many of you will know from Able Gamers, is now an Accessibility User Researcher for PlayStation. Mark Friend, who of course has been working in accessibility forever, has now had it formalised. As of last week, he is now Accessibility Lead for PlayStation Studios. And last but not least, Sightless Combat. He is now Accessible Gaming Research Officer for RNIB. RNIB are the UK's main blind and low vision advocacy organisation. It's the same one that ran that symposium that I was talking about earlier. His appointment marks, as far as I'm aware at least, the first time that a national body, disability body like that has created a role specifically for gaming. That growth of accessibility as a recognised discipline is still gathering pace. By the time of the next conference in April, there will be over 70 people in full-time dedicated roles. And I'm able to say that because of the number of roles that are currently in the process of being filled. A few months ago, we saw something completely unprecedented. There were 2 vacancies advertised at Rockstar, 2 vacancies advertised at Riot, 1 at PlayStation and 1 at Insomniac. It was only a few short years ago that there had never been any advertised game accessibility role ever. This summer, there were 6 advertised simultaneously. That is tremendous progress, but it does bring a problem with it. Experienced people are very quickly snapped up. The more senior roles in particular are increasingly hard to fill. So this means a couple of things. Firstly, consider creating more junior roles, particularly at companies where someone experienced is already in place. Like at Rockstar, the 2 vacancies advertised for Rockstar were actually to expand their team of 2 people out into 4, and those 2 new roles were junior and mid-level. There are a ton of passionate, talented people out there who just haven't had that chance to get their foot on the ladder, so please give them that chance. And secondly, a word of caution. If you have someone in your company who is doing great things for accessibility, give them an opportunity to make it their full-time role. If you don't, another company will. There is no greater accessibility asset than passionate, talented people. So do everything you can to retain them. And on that note, if you are either looking for people or looking for a position, there are channels dedicated to that on the conference Discord server, just called Vacancies and Looking for Work. And both the channels and the Discord server in general are kept active throughout the year. And that's it from me. As you can see, it has been quite a 6 months with incredible progress in all kinds of different areas, some of which you're going to hear more about later in the conference. I hope this has been either interesting or inspirational, and I hope it has helped to fuel your fires too. Because like I said at the start, these wins are everybody's wins. Every step forward benefits the whole community, developers and players alike. And finally, that document that I promised that has links to everything I mentioned in the talk, plus a bunch of other nice things in there too, that is at tinyurl.com GAConfOct22. So GACONFOCT22. Thank you. I hope you enjoy the next 2 days, and I will see you on the Discord.